All right, welcome to another episode of the Spiderpreneur podcast. The podcast which is all about sustainable personal and business development. In this episode, I'm going to interview an expert who knows everything about developing a listening mindset. And as you can possibly imagine, good listening requires certain skills, of course. And once you master these skills, you can, of course, reap the fruits from it. But what kind of fruits exactly, and what skills do you need to develop in the first place? Well, you will discover this and much more in my interview with Frans Reichardt. And Frans is a global speaker on customer experience, and he is the author of Kissing a Cactus, which is about how to develop a listening mindset. So welcome, Frans, to the Spiderpreneur podcast.
Thank you, Yuri. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Maybe you can tell me a bit more about who is Frans, and especially for the listeners who don't know you yet.
Yes. Well, first, thank you for having me, and thank you for your warm introduction. And you said I'm an expert in listening. I can tell you everything about listening. Well, I focus on listening, but I wouldn't be the first to say I'm an expert and I know everything about listening, because I learn every day, and I decided to go deeper in this subject because I thought, and I still think, that I make a lot of mistakes in listening every day, and it only gets clearer how important listening is. What more would you like to know about me? I'm the customer listener. That's my brand. I focus on helping companies, helping organizations listen to their customers and listen to their employees, because there's a lot to learn from that, and there's a lot to give in listening.
All right, so that's actually already a nice introduction, Frans, especially because you also kind of define the profession of being a professional customer listener. Mm-hmm. And also you let me know, there are many mistakes which are being made within the field of listening. So that's possibly also the reason why you made it a central focus within your business. And were there maybe any other reasons for you to really say okay, I'm going to position myself as the customer listener?
Well, yes, because I've found that I grew up in my professional life. I grew up in a time in which companies, brands were in sending mode all the time, and we didn't have internet, and we didn't have social media, and our customers didn't have a voice. Well, sometimes we did some market research. And market research meant that we hired a research agency, and that research agency invited our customers to their office, and they were offered a cup of coffee, and they were guided through the basement. I'm not joking. This is a true story. And we were in that basement, but we were hiding behind a wall, a mirrored wall. And in the room, our customers were there together with a professional interviewer, and we were behind that wall observing them and listening to what they were saying, but we weren't there, we weren't connected to them. And after a few hours, they left the building, and we were discussing together with the market research agency what we had seen and what we had heard. It's you can't imagine that nowadays. That was the time in which brands were in sending mode, and that has all changed. Every customer has a voice. Every customer can reach a lot of other people. 30 years ago, we could only share our experiences with our partner, with our children, with our neighbors, with our colleagues. And nowadays, our customers are very powerful. It's very easy for them to communicate with others on social media, for instance, on the internet, on their blogs. And it's also much easier for them to find information on products from our competitors. So the availability of information on products and services is much easier to find. So that forces brands to be more customer focused than they've ever been, not only by heart, but also because of money. If they don't, their customers will go somewhere else, because most of the products are available anywhere else. We've all heard from USPs, unique selling proposition. Well, tell me what brand, what product, what service is unique, and even if it is unique today, your competitor will have copied it tomorrow. So you have to stay close to your customer every day, and have your processes in line, and deliver a consistent quality in your products, but also in your services, in your logistics, in your after-sales service, etc., to keep your customers with you. And I decided to focus on listening, because there's so much to get there. And as I said in my introduction, there's so much to get from your customers, because as I said before, we didn't really listen to our customers. We hired someone else to listen to our customers, and we were observing. We were never in real direct contact, in touch with our customers for deep conversations on how we could improve on things. And I've found that we all, I'm pretty sure you too, all of us, we have experiences with products, with services, with brands that are positive, but also that are negative or could be better, that we don't share with the brands. They don't know. If we have problems in using our computer, if we have problems in using our phone or whatever, or if there's something wrong with these glasses, we don't always pick up the phone. We don't always send an email. We don't always give feedback to the producer. So that means they don't know. So there's so much positive feedback your customers don't share if you don't ask them, if you don't take the initiative to listen to them. But there's also much, well, let's say, negative feedback or feedback you could improve with, that customers also don't share. But they would love to share it with you if you take the time, if you take the initiative to ask them.
Wow. Yeah. So just ask them, you say.
Yeah. Yes. If the other day someone said, we never get reviews, and I was really thinking, how is it possible that you never get reviews? And suddenly I asked the guy, do you ask your customers for reviews? No. He said, well, I said, well, if you don't ask them, well, even then, I think once in a while, a customer will send you an email or will put something on Facebook or whatever on the review site. But if you don't ask them, you will miss a lot. And I understand that if you ask a customer for feedback and it's a disaster, the feedback is horrible. The customer experience has been horrible. I understand that you are not keen on putting that on your website. I understand that. Although I think it would show your honesty if amongst all positive reviews, you also dare to share negative feedback. But I understand that. But the value of negative feedback is most of the time much bigger. And the word negative is negative. So let's say improvement, there's always room for improvement, and your customers are happy to help you. There's much more value in that feedback than there is in the feedback of customers that are very happy. because those customers, there seems to be a contradiction, but it's very logical. We all aim to get the highest scores from our customers, but the customers that give us the highest scores don't give us the feedback we can improve on. The improvement comes from the customers that don't give you a 9 or a 10 in Dutch standards, or an A or a high score, but comes from the customers that give you a lower score, because they've got something to share with you that could be useful for you to improve.
Wow, okay. So that would be much more valuable, you'd say. And like, wouldn't it still be valuable to imagine you get a very high score, and with that also some kind of feedback about your talents or things which you are very good at? That actually also gives you, as the entrepreneur, insight in your most important talents in this case. So you can better utilize those, which could also be very beneficial to you.
Yes. You've probably heard from the Net Promoter Score. And if you haven't, I'm pretty sure you have received a question from a company to give them a score. How likely is it you would recommend us to a friend or a colleague? That is the Net Promoter Score question. And the answer goes from 0, not very likely, up to 10, very likely. And this methodology developed by Frans Reichardt is very powerful and very simple and very useful for brands, for specific customer journeys, for products, for services, and also for teams within companies, and also for individuals. Sometimes people hesitate to ask that question when you are an entrepreneur. You're not part of a big company, but you are the product, you are the service, you are the brand. You have to be able to be vulnerable to ask your customers, how likely is it you would recommend me to a friend or a colleague? Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I asked that to my customers. I asked that questions. I asked them 3 questions. How likely is you would recommend me to a friend or a colleague? How satisfied are you with the services I delivered? And what could I improve? And you have to be able to kiss the cactus. That's where the cactus pops up. If you are able to tell your limbic brain, your reptile brain, to not respond automatically in the fight or flight or freeze modus, but to take it easy and not being afraid to get killed by someone, because no one is going to kill you, but you just get feedback, and your rational brain can overrule your reptile brain and tell it everything is okay. Look at this. This is the experience from your customers, which is always true. We don't have to have a discussion. Is the customer always right? It's very easy for me to explain within 1 minute that the customer is not always right from my point of view, but it takes me less than 10 seconds to explain that the customer is always right from his or her point of view. If we are in the customer's position and we are not happy with something, or we are happy, we are right, because that's our experience. And the experience of our customers is our reality. We have to deal with that. We can argue, but it's no use. So it's good to know how the customer experiences, but you have to be able to know that it might sting, it might hurt a bit, but it's not being shared with you to hurt you. It's shared with you because you ask for feedback. Mm-hmm. And we love to hear, we love to get compliments, but the value is always in the feedback that is less enthusiastic than the customers that give you 9s or 10s.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also hear the word customer a few times now. imagine you'd not be an entrepreneur, but let's say just an individual without a business. Why would actually good listening skills contribute to a better life?
Well, actually, we are talking about relationships. And my business is customer relationships and customer experience and customer centricity and customer satisfaction. But basically, everything that applies on that relationship also applies to your personal relationship. And if you are, you said, suppose we're not talking about business, you're on your own. But even if you are thinking about what choices should I make in my life, I think listening can be very useful to get information, feedback from others. What do you think my talents are? What do you think I'm good at? What do you think I could improve on? That's very useful to take with you. But that's one. But I think your question, you're trying to move a bit to a personal life.
Yeah, also like just the curiosity in which ways it could also be applied for the non-entrepreneurials.
Yes. Well, sometimes when I give a speech, I also put a lot of humor in it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I give my audience a warning and I ask them if they are in a relationship and how long they are in a relationship. And last week I had someone who is in a relationship for 40 years. It doesn't matter if you're in a relationship for 40 years or for 1 year, but if you're honest to yourself, you know, in those years over that period, you have been a good listener or not. The other person has to trust you and has to feel safe enough to answer the question when you ask, how am I doing? And the Net Promoter Score question is a funny question in private life. If you ask your partner, how likely is it you would recommend me to a friend or colleague? And your partner says, well, 9 to 10. That could also mean, go away, leave me now. So you have to check that. What do we mean by this answer? But I think it could be very useful in private life. And I know many people are terrible listeners in their relationship. I remember I was sitting on the couch with my, at that time, my wife, and I was working on my laptop. We were sitting together and she was watching a TV program and I was, I don't know, typing email or whatever. And she was talking to me. And at a certain moment, she stopped talking. And everyone knows what's going to happen then. Because she asked me, are you listening? And I said, yes, I am. And then you know what she's going to ask. The $1 million question she asked, she said, what did I say? And then something strange happened. I could literally reproduce the last sentence she had said. Somehow it was in my cache memory or something. So I heard it, but I didn't listen. I hadn't listened. So there's a difference between hearing. So I always say hearing is something we are born with. Well, or not. Some people are born deaf. I was born half deaf. I'm single-sided deaf. I prefer to say I'm single-sided hearing because that's more positive. But hearing is something that's pre-produced, pre-programmed. But listening is never an unconscious activity. Listening can only be done if you consciously choose to listen and to digest what someone is saying. And I I became aware of that, not on that moment, but by thinking about it later on. What happened there? So I was able to reproduce the sentence, and many people I tell this story to, that I was able to reproduce literally the last sentence here. They recognize that. I think you mentioned listening skills in your introduction. I think listening is a skill. Hearing is not a skill. Hearing is something we do automatically, but by hearing, we don't listen yet. And you can develop those skills, and you can exercise them, but then you have to be aware of what does it take to improve those listening skills. What does it take to have that listening mindset, and to translate that listening mindset into being, as I call it, a listening leader in conversations.
Right. Yeah, talking about this listening mindset, like what kind of skills does this actually include, according to you?
I think a listening mindset, the listening skills, it starts with the listening mindset. If you are not convinced, if you don't truly believe the power of listening, both the receiving part, what do I get from you when I ask you, how are we doing? How am I doing? Are you happy? What could I improve in business or in private life? If you don't embrace that attitude, that belief, you can't build a listening mindset. That's one thing. The other thing is practicing, and like all things, practicing needs time. It needs practice. You have to do it.
Yeah.
And I've discovered that small things can change a lot. I will give you some practical advice. You and your listeners give some practical advice to start a conversation with someone. And it could be, well, my youngest son is 20 years old. My oldest son, 24 years old. They could be part of the experiment of your learning program. And you decide to have a conversation with them based on questions. And you are aware that your brain is like a volcano. So your brain responds to everything someone is saying. Always. Your brain is judging, or your brain is confirming, or your brain is whatever. Your brain, if I ask you, are you going on holiday? And said, yeah, where are you going? I go to Barcelona. Barcelona, and I see Nou Kamp, and I see Messi, and I see Neeskens, and I see Van Bronckhorst. And well, that's my association with Barcelona. I've never been there. Otherwise, I would have other associations. So that's what your brain is doing always. And we judge a lot. So if someone would tell us beautiful stories about, if I would have told about my visit to Moscow in 1993 and how wonderful the city, etc., I couldn't say now, tell the stories now, the same story now that I've shared 15 years ago without being judged, or without knowing that people are judging about me or about Moscow, about Russia. And I understand. But the exercise is listen, know that your mind is going to judge, but just ask questions, either open questions, closed questions, just questions. How was your day at school? Or how was your day at work? And what did you all do? And if you have young children, they will get fed up with it. Children hate it if they come home and say, how was your day at school? Oh, fuck, don't talk about school, because I'm just finished with school. I'm at home. That's how most children think. But if they're older, you can talk about things and ask questions.
The question part, Frans, like I'm still curious. Okay, imagine, yeah, you do judge and you do have certain thoughts, you do have certain things which you'd like to say, but someone is, for example, still talking. How can you then, in those cases, prevent yourself from actually sharing your thoughts while someone is still talking?
Keeping your mouth shut. If I understand your question well, how do you prevent yourself from interrupting or adding? You think you add to the conversation, but you don't. You just share your point of view or your experience. If someone says, "I'm going to Croatia," there's some, "Oh, Croatia, I've been there."
Yeah.
Why don't you keep your mouth shut? And why don't you say, "Oh, that's nice. Where are you going? Whom are you going with? How long are you going? Have you been there before? And what made you decide to go to Croatia?" You will find out that by asking questions and by listening, it shouldn't be a rapid fire of questions, tuck, 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 tuck. Because
we will get there later.
We will get there later. Someone will ask you, is this an interview? But if you listen, if you take the time to listen and to keep your mouth shut, people love it. People love to be listened to and to be asked questions. And the funny thing is, in that experiment, you will find the magic of listening. On one hand, you will get a lot of information in a very short time from the other person by keeping your mouth shut about what you would like to share. It's not about you, it's about the other person. And the funny thing is, you are giving the other person the most valuable thing you could give. And that's your personal attention. And that might sound very soft, but it's true. People value other people most because of their ability to listen. People love doctors that they don't know if it's a good doctor. The patient doesn't know, but the patient does know if the doctor is able to listen to what they have to say. Yeah. So that's the true power of listening. You get a lot out of it, but you're giving a lot.
All right. Okay. And I'm still wondering then, like for yourself, for example, Frans, how do you find the right balance between keeping your mouth shut on the one hand and on the other hand, like interrupting someone? Because I can also imagine that by interrupting someone, you can also keep the conversation alive and also like making it very interactive, so to speak.
Yes, that's true. It adds to a lively conversation. But if we talk about becoming aware of the power of listening and developing the listening mindset, sometimes you have to decide. So it's a conscious choice to say, okay, now I'm going to have a conversation about him or her, because someone has lost a job or is in a difficult situation with a relationship or something else. Then you will find that the other person is not interested in you. So put aside everything that you've experienced or that you think, but if you're with friends in a pub and having a beer and discussing serious topics, if you are the one that only asks questions and that you don't share your point of view, it might annoy people actually. And they will think, well, thank you for the question, but what do you think?
Yeah. So much more to it than just asking questions, although the asking the questions part is very important and maybe underestimated.
and very much underestimated. And to be honest, I think it would be a good idea to have listening lessons in school. It might sound strange, but we've never learned how to listen. And I really think we are missing a lot by not being able to listen, because by listening, you are also learning more from the other person's life and culture and point of view and experience and beliefs and backgrounds. So we can talk about being inclusive, but that sounds nice, and that is nice. That's good. But if we still don't listen, or if we don't listen to the ones in the world that oppose against being inclusive, or it's also about forgiving the other person for being or thinking the way he or she does. And now it's getting very serious when I look at what's happening in the world now. If Israel and Palestine, as long as they are not able to listen to each other, and we all know why they are not able to listen to each other. I understand why they are not able to listen to each other, because there's a lack of trust, which is an understatement. If you know the history, as long as they are not able to listen, or Russia and Ukraine, if they're not able to listen, it's not going to get better. Even if they're able to listen, it will take a long time. I don't have the answers how. I think it's they can't do it without help from others. But as long as you don't get to that point in which you're able to listen to each other, whether it is in your private life, whether it is between a brand and customers, or whether it is in political environments, there is nothing that even comes close to a relationship.
Wow. Yeah. And
or am I getting too serious now?
No, it's certainly not. No, it's lovely to hear the other areas you could apply this on, and also the different levels, from individuals to groups to maybe teams within organizations, even whole societies. So listening applies on almost everything, of course. Yes. And still, I think for most goals, if you want to accomplish those, or if you want to develop certain skills, you want to first look at your current level. And then I'm very curious, listening can be maybe quite hard to estimate your current level. So I'm curious, how can you find out your current listening level? Is this something which can be measured in some way?
Oh, that's very good. I think technically, yes. Medically, physically, your and I think it's not listening, it's hearing. Your hearing ability can be measured. So doctors can measure that I'm deaf in one ear, or they can measure the ability or the quality or whatever, the performance of your hearing. But listening, your ability to listening, it's worth thinking about that. It's a nice idea. I don't know about any method. I could think about it, and I'm happy to think about it with you or your listeners about developing. I don't know how. There's a lot of questions popping up now in my mind to quantify.
Yeah.
To measure the ability, so on a not so on an objective level, measure the listening skills.
Exactly.
I don't know. I would say, but that's probably too easy. The other person will be able to experience your listening skills, but that's not an answer to your questions. I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Now, maybe continue in that case, right?
Yeah, good idea.
And would you still say like, okay, looking at the level of people's listening skills, are people like more likely to, under or actually overestimate their listening skills?
I think most of people are not aware that it counts, that it matters. We all know the path of learning. Mm-hmm. From being not aware, you're not able to do it. Going to being aware, you're not able, etc., etc. And most of people think, well, listening, that's what we all do. And I think, well, listening is what most of us don't do. So they're not aware. And I've been in school many years, but listening has never been, not even one lesson, has never been a topic to talk about or to invite someone from outside to share his or her experiences. It would be wonderful to have an older couple in schools sharing how listening has added, how they discovered the power of listening and how it has added to their private life, to their business life, to their relationship with their children, with everyone, with your neighbors. With
mm-hmm. Yeah, would be lovely indeed. And still, then I'm curious. When I positioned you as the expert of listening, you also said, yeah, I may be the expert, but I'm still learning, and that will never stop, which was really nice and also humble to hear. And that also made me curious, like, can you actually eventually get to the point where you don't have to develop your listening skills anymore because they're just sufficient?
Is Cristiano Ronaldo ever perfect? Well, if you would ask my son, he would say he already is. But well, we've both been members of Toastmasters speaking club in Amsterdam. And I remember, because speaking is an important part of my job, I remember some members said, why are you a member of this speaking club? Because you're a good speaker already. And that's very nice to say. But to be honest, I never really understood that question. So when I asked them, somehow they thought if you are at a certain level, you stop learning. As if Djokovic is the best tennis in the world, and I guess he is, I'm not sure, or Nadal. But those guys, they are practicing every day, hours, to stay on that level. And I don't want to compare myself to Djokovic, Nadal, or Cristiano Ronaldo, but you understand what I mean. You're never there. You're never there. So I would say, you could say, well, if it never finished, I'm not even going to start. If I don't know that I will ever run the marathon, I'm not going to start walking, start running. And I think you have to, well, that's a famous saying, you have to start to be great, and you don't have to be great to start. And that also applies to listening. Everything you learn as from today makes you a better listener and adds to the quality of your life.
Yeah.
And it's not rocket science.
Yeah, so I guess like Frans, the result, the reason why you should become a better listener is actually then very clear, and yeah, that has to be enough motivation already to take more time in developing your listening skills. And still, like, how can you also not only looking at the results, but also the process itself, the listening itself, make more fun and make more motivating? Because some people may view listening as a bit boring, maybe. So how can they make it more fun and engaging?
Okay, do you think people think that, or do you think that?
Well, that's an interesting question. Let me give you an example of. I'm trying not to generalize here, but still, like the new generations, now it looks like their attention span is getting a bit,
Shorter?
shorter, exactly, because maybe because of the usage of social media and the many impressions they get all day long. And then listening could maybe in their viewpoint be a bit boring, why listen if you can do many other fun and engaging stuff?
If you think it's boring to listen or to ask questions, I would say try it. If you see a post on social media from one of your friends or so-called friends, because to me, but I'm old, there's a difference between friends and friends on social media, your connections. But if someone posts, especially in this time of year, posts a video or a photo, a picture from his or her holiday, we are either not responding, or we like, or we put a thumbs up, or a fire, or a heart eyes, or whatever. Emoji language. Nothing wrong with that. But imagine you would say, oh, that looks nice. How long are you staying? Or where are you going next? Ask a question. I'm pretty sure that the other one, the one that has posted the message, will be surprised and would love to hear from someone who shows interest. On one condition: if you're not interested, don't ask the question, because people have a perfect sensor, perfect radar for sensing your honesty. If you are not interested in other people at all, don't act as if you are. So the listening mindset also starts with, do I believe it's useful for me, it adds to me, and it adds to the other, if I have a listening mindset, and if I listen to what the other person has to say? It's not boring at all. Before we started this podcast, we had a few minutes of talking to each other. We have been in touch on LinkedIn, but this is more than LinkedIn, to see and to see you move again, and it would be even better to see each other in real life. But this is okay, and I'm asking you questions, and I don't think that's boring at all. But that's what I think, because in a few minutes I get a clearer picture of where Yuri is now. I don't know how many years it has been since we seen each other, and we've seen each other on social media. And that adds to being able to ask questions, to check, do you live in Barcelona now? What's your life about now?
Exactly.
I don't think it was boring.
No.
Did you think it was boring?
Certainly not. No, certainly not. No. And okay. And it's nice that you also gave the example of that you can even apply listening skills within the online world, within social media, and maybe not only use emoji, but also ask questions, maybe.
May I add something to that?
Certainly, Frans. Mm-hmm.
The reason why it is difficult for us, or why we don't do it, is, I think, because there's one person that is the most important person in our life. If you are honest, if I ask you, Yuri, what person is the most important person in your life?
Then I'd say that's a good question. And also a personal question. There are different people which are very important for me in different ways. That's the answer.
Okay.
Mm.
I think there's one person even more important than all those people that pop up in your mind that are important to you in different ways.
Yeah.
I think one person is even more important to you.
And you're going to say yourself or not?
You?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And because that's how we are programmed. We are programmed for survival.
Yeah.
So it's very humble to say that you would die for your dog or for your children. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in very critical situation, that's what people would do.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, if you're not in that situation to choose, we are self-focused. We are we don't have to feel guilty about that. We have been programmed to be self-focused to survive. And that doesn't help to listen. We are the star in the movie we are living each day. And all those other people are, I don't know the right English words, figurants in our movie in which we are the star. And that sounds cynical, but I don't mean it cynical. It's very realistic. So that means you have to be aware and have the mindset how important it is to have attention, to have an eye and an ear for the other person.
Yeah, that's a nice way of looking at it, Frans. Like that. Okay.
It doesn't happen automatically.
Mm.
It only happens consciously. If you make the conscious decision to listen, to focus on the other person.
Okay.
Not by ignoring yourself and not by forgetting yourself, but by getting useful information, useful feedback from the other person, and by giving attention. Well, I'm a professional speaker, so most of the time people expect you to say interesting things or to write interesting things, to be on, even if I go out for dinner with people or with business colleagues or customers. Sometimes I have the idea people expect from you to say inspiring things. It's sometimes very nice to lean back and listen and ask questions and listen to what other people have to say and think about that. And don't feel the urge to be on or to be in sending mode. Probably I'm a bit boring. Because I never heard that before, but this afternoon I've heard that listening can be boring to some people.
Possibly. I think that
I never thought about it that way, but you're probably right. Yeah. And younger generation, because you related it to that, they are more in the sending mode.
Yeah.
And showing the world that that they are doing, that they're happy all the time, and they're doing funny things and nice things all the time. So probably it's more boring for them to go in listening mode. It's a funny thing, actually, because we are moving business-wise. We are moving from brands that were in sending mode, putting lots of advertising money to get their brand known and to sell. And nowadays that doesn't work. People hate companies that sell, or that send. Customers love to be part of communities of brands that listen and that show they care for the customers, for society, for the world, for the environment, and your question makes me think about, on the consumer side, probably there's another trend the other way around, that we have always been in listening mode because we couldn't send, we didn't have the channels, and now we have the channels, and now we go in sending mode with our podcasts, with our blogs, with our videos, with our posts on social media. Okay, it's interesting. There might be a blog in this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That things are coming together, you know.
Yeah, or moving away from each other.
Or even that.
Way, and we go that way.
Yeah, like that.
Okay.
I think this is also a good moment before we even further contemplate about this beautiful topic, where you could also write a blog article about, like maybe to switch to the even more shorter questions, not only short questions, but also short answers. And I'm referring now to the rapid fire.
Go ahead.
And the idea is, of course, to keep it very short, to not think too much about it, and to share the first things which pop up.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's start, Frans. Ready?
I'm ready.
Good to hear. Let's go. What would be for you the closest synonym for listening?
Attention.
Attention, okay. And like, imagine you'd explain what listening is about to a toddler. Then how would you define it in the most basic way?
Keeping your mouth shut.
Things are coming together here. And what is the biggest misunderstanding regarding listening?
That we listen automatically.
Okay. And what is the most efficient approach for actually becoming a better listener quickly?
Asking questions.
Asking questions. All right. Why should specifically entrepreneurs constantly develop their listening skills?
Because otherwise you will miss a lot from what your customers think.
There we go.
And your employees, customers and employees think.
Both of them, stakeholders in general. All right. And what is the one must read for entrepreneurs who actually want to develop their listening skills?
It's too many. I love the books of Steven van Bellegem. He's a Belgian author, speaker, and thinker, a good thinker. I could give you a long list, and I'm happy to share with you. But I would say Steven van Bellegem, start there.
All right, start there. That's good. And next up, like, which leader, Frans, do you actually view as the greatest listener of all time?
Well, I would say Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. All right.
And what is? Can I explain, or is that?
You can give a bit of context here, if you will.
If you are able to forgive the ones that are responsible for putting you in jail for such a long time, I think forgiving is an important part of listening.
Okay, yeah, she already mentioned. Very good to emphasize again. And what is, according to you, the most common mistake for people who are actually trying to develop their listening skills?
Judging.
Okay. And how do you decide to which people you can best listen to?
Specific people or in general?
In general.
In general. I would say your children.
Okay.
Or your parents.
Or both, your children and your
Yes,
parents.
depends
Okay.
on where you are in life.
Mhm.
If you don't have children, it's difficult to listen to them. And of course, but you wouldn't be surprised, in business life, I would say employees and customers.
All right. Yeah. And if you don't have children, maybe listen to your inner child, right?
Oh yes, but yes, and listen to yourself.
Exactly.
Get very clear what you like and love.
Yeah. Yeah. And last question for you, Frans, is like, how can you prevent yourself from listening to the things you actually want to hear? So I'm talking about the things which are basically confirming your beliefs.
What's the question again? The first part of your question?
How
How can
you
you
can
prevent yourself?
exactly from listening to the things you actually want to hear from other people,
Yeah.
which are
I
confirming.
love that question because that's what we all do. We all live in the bubble of people that are like us, think like us, etc. What you could do to prevent yourself from that is invite yourself, challenge yourself sometimes to go into the shoes of the other ones and try to look at the world at the same things you look at from a certain point of view and try to look at it from the other point of view.
Take up different perspectives. Beautiful.
Yes, exactly. Take a different perspective, and our brain is not programmed to that, again, because we are trained for survival. So our point of view is the truth, is the world. But it doesn't get you any further if you don't develop the ability to be able to look at things from the other point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, makes sense. All right, Frans, those were actually all of my questions. So yeah, thank you so much for this value sharing. Really
Thank you.
lovely and valuable. And I'm also curious for the listeners who want to know more about developing their listening skills. What can they best do? Also looking at what you can offer them to take the next steps.
If they would like to be inspired with stories, I've written about the topic of listening to your customers, or in a broader perspective, the power of listening. They could go to my website and subscribe to my email e-newsletter, and they will get a free ebook. And for your Dutch listeners, they can go to the Dutch part of my website, and if they go to fransreichardt.com, there's a Dutch flag, and there's a British flag, Union Jack, and they can choose either the English ebook or the Dutch ebook with stories about the power of listening.
Okay. So both possibilities for the English speakers as well as the Dutch speakers around there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Dutch readers, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks again, Frans, for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We
Of
could
course.
have talked for hours.
Yeah,
we will do
yeah.
that another time. Either when I'm in Spain or when you are back in the Netherlands.
Let's certainly do that. Sounds like a solid plan. And yeah, for the listeners, I hope to, of course, welcome you again in the new episode where I will be interviewing a new expert about this time regenerative entrepreneurship. But more about that later on. Enjoy your week and see you then.